Yes, guys, welcome back to another episode on Beyond the Altar podcast. This is now episode 9. And unfortunately, our love series throughout the month of February has come to a close. However, now we are in the month of March, and I want to start off this month with a banger, right? So, this is a topic that the Lord has placed upon my heart so dearly. And loads of people, they have types in women and men, and loads of women of God, they desire to be a Proverbs 31 woman, and loads of men of God desire a Proverbs 31 woman in their life, but none of them really know what it means to be a Proverbs 31 woman, because it's not the resume of a Proverbs 31 woman, it's more of the fruit of a Proverbs 31 woman. So today we're going to be looking at the content of their character, right? What it truly means to be a Proverbs 31 woman. Because it sounds nice, however, people don't really know the deep meaning behind it. So, we're going to be looking at Proverbs chapter 31, verses 10 to 31. Okay, this is King Lemuel's mother speaking. So, verse 10, an excellent wife who can find, she is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. So, what we can see from these two verses here is in verse 10, and verse 10 is one of the most famous verses in the whole of the book of Proverbs, and loads of men of God or Christians, they tend to say that to their Christian girlfriend, and just so we're just gonna call this the Riz verse, right? The Riz verse. So what we can see in verse 10 is that a woman's value is far greater than what she does, right? An excellent woman who can find. So her value should have a significant impact, and her value should have recognition. It should be recognized in your life, right? And what we see at the end of verse 10, right, where King Lemuel's mother says she is far more precious than jewels, what she is saying is that a woman who fears the Lord is rare and valuable. And I say rare and valuable because it's very rare to find this in this generation. It's very rare to find that type of woman in this generation, because it's so normalized to find women in clubs and indulging with other men and doing all this stuff. But a woman with great value is far greater than a woman who is immoral. Now, when what we see in verse 11 is that the trust of a man is given safely to a virtuous woman, because what verse 11 says is that the heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. So the trust of a man is given safely to a woman with virtue, a woman who fears the Lord. And this is actually, and verses 10 to 31, this is all about a woman who fears the Lord, right? So a woman who fears the Lord, a woman who abides in wisdom and instruction, will be given trust by her man in a safe manner. So now let's read on verses 12 to 16. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. She is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from afar. She rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and portions for her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands she plants a vineyard. So what we can see here from verses 12 to 16 is that it's not the resume of a godly woman, it's more of the fruit that she bears. If you are going for the men out there, if you are going for a woman who looks good on the outside but on the inside is just impure and dirty, don't go for that woman, because that woman does not have the virtues of a God-fearing woman. That woman does not have the fear of the Lord. That woman does not bear fruit. And so if you are desiring a woman just based off her outward appearance, you've already lost. You cannot judge people based off their outward appearance. You must judge them off the content of their character. You must know them by their fruits, right? You will know a person by their fruits, as scripture says. So verses 17 to 20. She dresses herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. She puts her hand to the distaff, and her hands hold the spindle. She opens her hand to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. So what we can see in verse 17 is that a woman of God, a woman who fears the Lord, will dress modestly. Will dress modestly. The way you present yourself in public also makes an impact. It has an effect on your relationship with Christ. Because if you cannot claim to have a good relationship with Christ and then go out dressing so revealingly. And we see that so many times. We see that so many times in public, especially with women at nightclubs and all that stuff. We see that. We see that you cannot claim to have a good relationship with Christ and then dress immodestly, right? That's not right. So, and another thing is that sometimes your biggest show of weakness is the way you present yourself, right? So it just says here in verse 17, she dresses herself with strength, right? And that strength comes from the Lord, and we see that in Philippians 4:13. That strength comes from the Lord. So if your strength comes from the Lord, you are abiding in wisdom, and when you abide in wisdom, your ways are guided. And when your ways are guided, you will know not to dress like that. When we look at verse 20, we see that the same way Jesus reached out his hand to Peter is the same way a virtuous woman extends her hand to the poor and needy, right? And we see this at the end of verse 20 where King Lemuel's mother says, and she reaches out her hands to the needy. A woman with virtue is humble enough to extend her hand to the poor and needy. And that is very, very beautiful because it shows that she is a woman with integrity, and it shows that she is more than just a task handler, right? And actually verses 17 through 20, right, have been echoed all throughout Proverbs, right? The virtuous wife is noted for her strength. Okay, a virtuous woman is noted for her strength. So let's look at verses 21 to 23. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household are clothed in scarlet. She makes bed coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. So what verses 21 through 23 is saying is that a virtuous wife has the wisdom, diligence, and preparation to ready her household for adversity, right? Oh, a true woman of God is prepared for any type of warfare because submission is mission for the wife. Submission is mission for the wife. And what we see in verse 22, she makes bed coverings for herself, right? So it's a sign of independence. So rather than depending on you all the time, because a lot of men, they desire a woman that depends on them. However, the word of God says something else, right? A true woman of God doesn't depend on a man, it depends on the man, which is Christ, right? And what we see at the end of verse 22, her clothing is fine linen and purple. Fine linen and purple, that is a sign of royalty, right? A sign of royalty. And verse 23, her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. So it's like where a woman with virtue, a woman who fears the Lord, a woman who abides in wisdom and instruction, will have an impact on the people around her. It will have an impact on you. It will have an impact on her husband. So now let's look at verses 24 to 31 to close. She makes linen garments and sells them. She delivers sashes to the merchant. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Let's stop right there. I'm so sorry. I was supposed to go to verse 31, but I feel the need to stop here at verse 27. So let's actually look at verse 26 first, right? She opens her mouth with wisdom, right? A woman who fears the Lord, a true Proverbs 31 woman, is guided in her words, is wise with her words. And at the end of verse 26, it says, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. So, what is kindness? We've discussed this 2 episodes ago, right? Kindness is being able to grab a person by their shirt and pull them to safety because you know that a car is coming while they're crossing the road. Whereas being nice allows that person to just, you know what, keep going. It's okay. It's still safe, knowing that there's a danger ahead while they're crossing the road, right? So kindness is being able to say the truth in love, whether it's harsh, whether it's firm, whether it kind of offends them a little bit. Being able to say the truth in love is all that matters, and that is the it is one of the true meanings of being a Proverbs 31 woman, right? Teaching of kindness is on her tongue. And when we look at verse 27, she looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. We can see that a Proverbs 31 woman is observant and her faith moves. It's not stagnant. It's not static. It doesn't stay still. Her faith moves. Her faith prospers. Her faith is so strong and so big that it can tell a mountain to move from here to there and it will move. So now let's look at verses 28 through 29. Her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. So what verses 28 through 29 is saying is that the women with character and wisdom rightfully receives the blessings and praises of her family. Maybe the reason why you feel unappreciated is because you bear no fruit. You don't have the virtues of a godly woman. And let's talk about the men as well. Maybe the reason why you don't feel appreciated by others, the reason why maybe you don't feel recognized, it's nothing to do with them disliking you or having any resentment in their heart for you. Maybe the reason why is because they see that you bear no fruit. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates. And this is very, very powerful. And I want us to look at verse 30 to close. Right? Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. So anyone can have charm, but not everyone can have character. Anyone can have charm and beauty and looks. Anyone can say words that sound comforting and pleasing to the ears, but not everyone can have character. To be a Proverbs 31 woman, you need to have character. And let's talk for the men as well. Imagine if Proverbs 31 was about men. To be a Proverbs 31 man, you must have character. You must have character. There must be a transformation, a change in who you used to be and who you are now. And let's look at verse 31. Give her of the fruits of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates. So before doing anything with a woman, look at the fruit of her life and the content of her character. Yes, I've echoed that so much throughout this episode, but it's true. You cannot just, for the men out there, you cannot just get into any relationship with a woman just because she looks outwardly appealing. You must judge her by her fruit and the content of her character. So, to wrap up this episode in a nutshell, the true meaning of being a Proverbs 31 woman is number one, have the fear of the Lord. Number two, bear much fruit. And number three, have character. So I pray that Proverbs 31 has been a blessing to you. And I hope this opened the eyes of the men out there, and also open the eyes of the women, because loads of women claim to be Proverbs 31 women, and loads of people desire to be Proverbs 31 women, not knowing the true cost and the true meaning behind it, right? So I hope this was an eye opener to all of you guys. So don't just go around claiming anything and everything when you know you lack character, okay? So I pray this episode has been a blessing to you today. God bless. Take care. I'm going to see you next week for episode 10. I love you all.